We have all assembled here this evening to understand what is Vipassana and how does it help us in our day-to-day life and how it is relevant in today's world. Vipassana is a process, is a technique of truth realization, self-realization, realization of the truth pertaining to oneself, within oneself, by oneself, at the experiential level. The truth about misery, how misery arises, how it multiplies, and we have to suffer. Is there a way to come out of misery? And if there is a way, what the way is, how to come out of misery? For that one has to realize the truth, the deepest cause of the misery at the experiential level. Today is a very auspicious day. On this day, when Buddha, became fully enlightened, on this day he gave the first sermon, first teaching to understand, not merely at the intellectual level, to understand at the actual level the truth about misery, the truth about the real cause of misery, the truth about the way to come out of misery, and the truth of realization, freedom from misery. About misery. It was not necessary to reach the stage of full enlightenment to understand and say that misery starts with the birth. When you come across any sickness, illness, it is a misery. When you become old, it is a misery. When you face death, it's a misery. When you get associated with undesirables, undesirable person, undesirable incident, undesirable situations, it is a misery. When you get disassociated with desirables, desirable person, desirable incidents, desirable situation, it is a misery. You crave for something and you don't get it. It is a misery. Anybody can understand that. Even somebody with a very scattered mind can understand. But that was not the teaching of the enlightened one at the depth. With a scattered mind, you can understand these are all miseries, miseries, miseries. But he said, the attachment that you have to make your mind very one-pointed concentration, which in Pali is said sankhita chittena. Mind must be one-pointedly concentration, and then you realize the mind and matter, the aggregate of matter, the four aggregates of mind, these five, the combination of these two, combination of mind and matter, towards which one generates so much of identification. I, mine, and enormous attachment towards it. This is misery. This cannot be merely understood at the intellectual level, for which he gave this technique of vipassana. One has to train on one's mind to become concentrated, one-pointed concentration, with the object of truth, truth pertaining to mind and matter, nothing else. And then working on it, mind should become so much concentrated, so sharp, so sensitive that it can realize the truth at the deepest level. Then one understands this is the real misery. The cause of misery also becomes very clear at that point where there is a combination of mind and matter, and where out of ignorance one starts identifying I, mine, the body as I, mine, the four aggregates of mind as I, mine, and because of that, one develops tremendous attachment to this. And the attachment is there, the misery starts. With this combination, at the very depth of the mind, at the deepest level, at times one feels very unpleasant sensation. Because of that, one generates aversion. At times one feels very pleasant sensation. Because of that, one reacts with craving, clinging. And having reached that stage where one can feel the combination of mind and matter, the truth of the mind and matter, the subtlest truth of mind and matter, it becomes so clear that as and when I generate craving, I lose the peace of my mind. I lose the harmony of my mind. I lose the balance of my mind. I become a miserable person. Similarly, as and when I generate aversion, I lose the peace of my mind. I lose the harmony of my mind. I lose the balance of my mind. I become very miserable, very miserable. Observing the first truth, what is misery? Not the misery that we see with a scattered mind. There is also a misery, nobody can deny that. But what he wants to experience the misery at the deepest level. And once you go to that deep level, it becomes so clear. The cause of misery becomes so clear. You are reacting to it with craving or with aversion. Craving and aversion are two sides of the same coin. When you're craving for some experience, you aversion towards something opposite to it. When you have aversion towards certain situation, you're craving towards something opposite to it. So both of them, craving and aversion, are two sides of the same coin, and both of them make us so miserable, so miserable. When one comes to that stage and realizes the real truth of the origination of misery, how it originates, and how it keeps on multiplying, keeps on overpowering us, then we lose all the sense of reality, and we keep on reacting in a wrong way, harming ourselves more and more, and harming others also more and more. So a path was given how to come out of this misery, and that is vipassana. Anyone who wants to experience this technique, a very scientific technique, no blind faith is involved, no dogma involved, no rites or rituals involved. It is self-realization of the interaction of mind and matter. You start from the very gross level, move deeper, you reach the root, where this combination, out of ignorance, one keeps on generating craving and aversion. For that one has to spare 10 days of the life. I was fortunate. I spared 10 days of my life. And now hundreds and thousands of people around the world, They have taken these 10-day courses and they have understood the truth, not the truth of the enlightenment, universal truth. This enlightened one experienced it, discovered it, made use of it for his own enlightenment, his own liberation, then out of compassion, infinite compassion, started distributing it to one and all for the rest of his life, 45 years, one and all. So the first teaching was given on this auspicious day. Joining a course, what you will do? The path is called Eightfold Noble Path. Noble in the sense that the path is so pure, path is so scientific, so rational, so pragmatic, no blind faith, no cult, no dogma, mere practice, your own experience. You accept the truth with your own experience, not because your teacher says so, not because the Buddha said so, not because the scripture says so, your own experience. You have to experience the truth from the grossest level to the subtlest level. You realize the truth, and when you find that it is helpful to you and helpful to everybody, then only accept it. And not only accept it, then live that life for your good. So, to realize this truth, you require a very congenial atmosphere where there is no disturbance from outside, and you require somebody, an experienced person, to guide you. You have decided to join a camp. What you will do? You are asked to sit down. Sit down comfortably. In any posture that keeps you comfortable for longer periods at a stretch is a good posture for you. Not necessarily a lotus posture or half lotus posture. If someone can sit, go ahead, nothing wrong. Otherwise, any posture that keeps you comfortable for a longer period at a stretch is a good posture for you. Keep your back and your neck straight. This helps you to keep the mind very alert. Keep your eyes gently closed, your mouth gently closed. And you are here now to experience the truth about mind and matter, to which one keeps on saying, I, mine. This physical structure, I, mine, so much identification towards it, so much of attachment towards it. And the mental structure, one keeps on saying, I, mine. So much of identification, so much of attachment. Let us see what it is, the truth about it. The first reality that you will experience is the breath coming in, the breath going out. There is no physical activity now, no vocal activity now. You are just sitting quiet, closed mouth. The first reality, the breath coming in, the breath going out. Every step that you take on the path is the step with reality, a reality that you experience. So you are experiencing the breath coming in, the breath going out. As it is, yatha bhuta, as it is, not as you would like it to be, as it is, the entire path, as it is, as it is. You are aware of the truth as it manifests itself from moment to moment, from moment to moment. At this moment, the breath coming in, the breath going out. See that you don't make it a breathing exercise. Don't try to control the breath. Never try to regulate the breath. That is a different technique altogether. We call it pranayama. It has its own benefit. We are not here to condemn other techniques. It is so good for the health of the body. But this is quite different. Here, you are training to develop the faculty of awareness of the truth, mere awareness, whatever it is. The breath coming in, going out, naturally, normally. If it is deep, it is deep. Just accept the fact, it is deep. If it is shallow, it is shallow. Passing to left nostril, right nostril, right nostril. Do nothing. Just observe. That means just feel. Just feel the truth as it is. Like you are sitting at the bank of the river and the river is flowing. You do nothing for the flow of the river, it is natural. You are just sitting at the bank and observing the flow. You are keeping your mind at the entrance of the nostrils and you are just feeling the flow of the breath as it is. As it is. So easy, so simple. And yet, whenever you decide to take a 10-day course, you will find so difficult, so difficult. You will hardly feel a couple of breaths and the mind is gone somewhere. And after some time, you realize what happened. I was here to observe the breath. What I started doing? All right, you start again. You start again. And in a few seconds, again gone. A few seconds, again gone away. Sometimes, not every student, but quite a few students on the first day become very frustrated, very irritated, start generating negativity towards oneself, negativity towards one's own mind. What sort of mind I am carrying? Such an easy job, just observe, do nothing, and yet you can't do. What sort of mind? And the guide will say, no, don't generate negativity. Negativity is negativity, whether you generate towards somebody else or towards yourself. It gives you misery. And you come here to come out of misery. No negativity. Just accept the reality. You're observing the breath, mind wandered away. And as soon as you realize, oh, mind wandered away, smilingly accept it. Oh, the mind has wandered away. All right, the breath is still there. I start again. Start again. Mind wandered away. You just accept. Mind has wandered away. Again work. Patiently, persistently, you keep on working. Mind will keep on wandering. You will bringing it back. Very patiently, very patiently. The second day you will find mind is becoming more and more calm, tranquil. The third day, much more calm, tranquil, more concentrated. Not that it has become totally calm, totally tranquil, but compared to the first day, much better, much better. And you are working continuously. This is one very important factor of this technique, practice of this technique. Continuity of practice is the secret of success. And that is why you allow yourself to be imprisoned in this prison of Vipassana camp. 10 days, you have no contact with outsiders. You can't meet anybody. You can't talk with anybody. You only, if any problem, you talk with your teacher, that's all. Or with the management if there is problem about management. You are a prisoner now, but for your good. So continuously, from morning 4:30 till night 9:30, with few breaks for your breakfast, for your lunch, etc., for your rest and all that. But continuous. In 3 days you will notice, in many cases, the breath becomes so subtle, so fine, and so short, fine like a thread, very thin thread. As it comes out, it makes a U-turn, goes in, comes out, makes a U-turn. So short and so subtle. The mind is working with that reality. So mind also becomes subtler and subtler, sharper and sharper, more and more sensitive. So at the end of third day, you will find the mind has become so sensitive. Now it has started experiencing some further realities pertaining to this mind-matter phenomenon. Breath was also a mind-matter phenomenon. At the apparent level, it looked as if it's just a physical function. My lungs are working, therefore I breathe in or breathe out, I breathe. Yes, true. But the breath is also related to the mind, very strongly related to the mental impurities. As you keep on working with the awareness of the breath, mind wanders away in the past, future, some memory of the past, some aspiration of future, some fear of future, and impurity arises. Fear, anger, hatred, craving. And you notice, any impurity that is in the mind, the breath loses its normality. It's no more normal. It becomes slightly hard, slightly fast. And when that impurity has gone away, again it becomes normal. So it is so clear why the Enlightened One gave us this object of breath. It is strongly related to mind as well as matter, the combination of the two. Now, at the end of 3 days, you start experiencing further subtler realities. Because you are working on a small area, that is very important. One pointed concentration, and that is below the nostrils, above the upper lip, small area. Because you are working on a small area continuously, with truth, the whole process does not allow you to have any kind of imagination. No imagination. When you are working with the breath, no verbalization, no visualization, no imagination, no suggestion, outer suggestion or outer suggestion, no imposition of this philosophical belief or that philosophical belief, nothing doing. The reality as it is, the breath as it is, then only you start experiencing subtler realities as they are. Throughout the body, every moment, there is some biochemical reaction or the other taking place. Every moment. Some electromagnetic reaction is taking place every moment, which manifests itself as this physical sensation or that physical sensation. So throughout the body, every moment, there is some sensation or the other. In this area, you start feeling sensation at the end of the 3rd day. Any sensation, maybe heat, maybe perspiration, maybe throbbing, pulsing, vibrating, tingling, anything. Now you start observing that. That means you start feeling that. Without reacting to it, just observe as it is, as it is. From 4th day onwards, you start working from the top of the head to the tips of the toes, the entire body. And you find everywhere, every part of the body, some sensation or the other. Some sensation or the other. In some cases, the 1st day or 2nd day, this is what we call Vipassana. Now Vipassana starts after observation of breath. 1st day, 2nd day, some people do not get sensation on certain parts of the body. But you keep on working patiently, persistently. Very soon one reaches the stage where one feels sensations throughout the body, every part of the body, every particle of the body. Initially, one comes across very solidified, intensified, unpleasant cross sensations like pain, pressure, heaviness, numbness, heat, etc. But as you keep on observing, mind is becoming sharper and sharper. All these solidified sensations, they get divided, dissected, disintegrated, dissolved. The entire physical structure gets dissolved. No solidity. At the apparent level, the body is solid. But at the ultimate level, the true level, which was a great realization of this enlightened person, a great discovery, that the entire physical structure is nothing but tiny little atoms, for which he used the word, he coined the word kalapa, tiniest particle of the material world. Entire body is made of these tiny particles. And this tiny particle is not solid. This is just changing. Wavelet, arising, passing. Entire physical structure, arising, passing. And entire outside world, arising, passing. Mere vibration. A great super scientist of the spiritual world. 26 centuries back, without the help of any scientific instruments or apparatus of today, he reached that stage by insight, by his own experience, that the entire physical structure is mere vibration, Pakampito, pakampito. Sabbo, loko, pakampito. Entire universe is vibration, vibration. Mind is also vibration, vibration. Mental contents are also vibration, vibration. Initially one comes across solidified mental contents, maybe anger, hatred, passion, fear, all solidified. As you keep on observing, dividing, dissecting, disintegrating, dissolving, mere vibration, mere vibration. Vibration of this wavelength or that wavelength, vibration of this velocity or that velocity, mere vibration, mere vibration. When one reaches that stage, then it becomes easy to understand. It is not that everybody will reach that stage on the first 10 days, but the path takes it to that. Some start feeling on the first 10 days, some on the second 10 day, some maybe on a 20-day course, but one reaches that stage where the entire body is mere vibration, mere vibration. Mind, matter, both vibration, vibration. The attention goes to the eye sense door, vibration, vibration. Ear sense door, vibration, vibration. Nose sense door, vibration, vibration. Tongue sense door, vibration, vibration. Body sense door, vibration, vibration. Mind sense door, vibration, vibration. These are the only 6 sense doors by which the world comes in contact with you, or you come in contact with the world. No other way. If you don't have the ear sense door, you are deaf from the birth. For you, there is no world of sound. You are blind from the birth. There is no world of shape or form or color or light. So the world is world when it comes in contact with these 6 sense doors. Now what happens? A good meditator, something has come in contact with, say, ear sense door. A sound has come in contact with ear sense door. Sound is also a vibration. The ear is also vibration. Vibration coming in contact with vibration generates a new type of vibration. Like you strike a gong. Already there is some vibration in the gong. You strike the gong. You strike the gong on one point and the whole gong starts vibrating, a particular type of vibration. A sound has come in contact with your ear, a vibration. Throughout the body, there is a flow of very normal, natural, neutral vibration. One part of the mind. Its job is to cognize. Just now I said 4 aggregates of the mind. One aggregate of the mind. Its job is to cognize. Hey, look, something has happened. Something has happened at the ear sense door. Or maybe the eye sense door, or nose sense door, or tongue sense door, or body sense door, or mind sense door. Look, something has happened. Its job is only to cognize. That's all. Immediately, second part of the mind will raise its head. What has happened? What has happened at the ear sense door? Some sound. What sound? With all the memory of the past, with all the experience of the past, this part of the mind will recognize these are words. What words? Words of abuse or words of praise. It has recognized. Not only recognized, it gives evaluation. With all the experience of the past, it gives evaluation. With all the conditioning of the past, it gives evaluation. Words of abuse, oh, very bad. Words of praise, ah, wonderful. It has done its duty. This part of the mind has done its duty. It has recognized, given evaluation, and you notice, a good meditator of Vipassana will notice the neutral flow of vibrations suddenly changes. As soon as this valuation is given, abuse very bad, and the entire flow of vibration becomes very unpleasant vibrations throughout the body. Or the valuation is given praise, wonderful, it changes into very pleasant sensations throughout the body. Third part of the mind starts feeling these sensations, pleasant, unpleasant, whatever they are. And then the fourth part starts working. Pleasant sensation. This fourth part will react with craving, clinging. Unpleasant sensation, the fourth part will react with aversion, hatred, and will continue to react. So long as the sensation is there, it will continue to react, craving, aversion, craving, aversion, craving, aversion. That is where the misery starts, where you generate either craving or aversion. Another wonderful thing that was discovered by this enlightened person was there was already a teaching in India of those days. We have gone through the scriptures of all the ancient scriptures of different traditions, and we have found that they were teachers who were teaching, don't get indulged in these sense objects. Don't generate craving or aversion towards sound or shape or color or smell or taste or touch or thought. Don't react. Don't react with craving or aversion. That was there. Then what was speciality of this enlightened one? He discovered, he says, you are not reacting. You are not reacting to these outside objects. At the apparent level it looks. Some words have come, they are words of abuse, and you feel I am reacting to these words of abuse with aversion. Some words, and you understand these are words of praise, and you feel you are reacting to these words of praise. No. Your reaction and the outside object having come in contact, there is a missing link, and that was discovered by this enlightened person. That is the sensation on the body. And that is why he says, Saraitan Pachaya Phassa. 6 sense doors come in contact with the 6 sense objects. Phassa Pachaya Vedana. There is a sensation. And Vedana Pachaya Tanaha. The craving and aversion arises because of the sensation. If we don't make ourselves efficient to feel the sensations, how will we know where the craving has arisen, aversion has arisen? How can we come out of this mad habit of craving and aversion unless you go to the source of this bad habit? That is why Vipassana was taught. Go to the depth, go to the depth. Now you are aware of entire physical structure, the mental structure, the outside object coming in contact and creating a sensation in the body, pleasant, unpleasant, and old habit pattern, you are reacting with craving, aversion. Now with this technique, you train yourself. Due to this reason or that reason, due to this object or that object, a sensation has arisen. Pleasant, and you are craving. Unpleasant, you are generating aversion. You realize, you are asked to realize, the teacher will ask you, just say, whatever sensation has arisen, is it eternal? Unpleasant sensation, very intensified, very unpleasant gross sensation, it arises, seems to stay for some time, but ultimately passes away, is not eternal. And when you come across pleasant sensation, very subtle, pleasant vibration, same characteristic, rising, passing, with great rapidity, something which is so ephemeral, so impermanent. What is the sense of reacting to this with craving or with aversion? One starts understanding it at the experiential level. Mere sermons won't help. Mere reading the books won't help. Mere listening to these discourses won't help. They will give inspiration. Good. They will give us some guidance. But actually the experience, one has to reach that stage where craving arises, where aversion arises. And when they arise out of the mad habit of the past, they keep on growing, multiplying, and they overpower you. Any impurity arises at the depth and multiplies. Anger is a reason, multiplies, overpowers you. Then you perform such unwholesome action at the vocal level, at the physical level, and later on you repent. I should not have said so. I should not have done so. Meaningless, it doesn't help. Second time again same situation. And again, because of your mad habit, again you react in the same way. You have become a slave of your habit pattern. Because of ignorance, one does not know what is happening within the framework of the body. This is avidya. Ignorance. One has to come out of that ignorance, experience the truth, understand where I am making a mistake. Look, I am reacting with craving or aversion. And all other defilements are products of these two, craving and aversion, lobha, dosha, and different kinds of impurities arise, multiply, overpower you. One starts understanding that at the experiential level and understands that whenever I generate craving, I become so miserable. Whenever I generate aversion, I become so miserable. Because one has gone to that depth where one feels peace. And that peace is broken. No more peace. as soon as you generate craving or aversion or any other defilement, your peace is lost, your harmony is lost, your balance of the mind is lost, you are a miserable person. One starts understanding that at the experiential level, the habit pattern starts changing. That is why this Eightfold Noble Path, when you come to a course, you have to take 5 precepts, at least for those 10 days, you abstain from performing any action, vocal or physical, which will harm other beings, which will hurt other beings, which will disturb the peace and harmony of other beings. That is Shila, morality. And for that, you have to learn how to control your mind, and that is your working with the respiration. And with that, you go to the depth and develop your own wisdom, your own insight to understand the truth. And that is Panya, wisdom, insight. All these 3 combined is the Eightfold Noble Path. Anybody can practice. This is not limited to people of a particular community or a particular tradition or a particular country. Next, not even human being is human being. Out of ignorance, one keeps on generating one impurity or the other and keeps on making oneself miserable, miserable. When one starts realizing that, not at the intellectual level, won't help. Not merely accepting at the emotional or devotional level, Buddha said so, or our ancient scripture says so, nothing doing. This will be just coming from one ear and going out of the other. Or it may help to purify your mind at the surface level only, or slightly deeper. You are not going to the source of your misery. Technique wants you to go to the source of the misery. And that becomes so clear that I am making myself miserable. Out of ignorance, I put my hand on burning fire. It burns. I take my hand back. It burns. This is the nature of the fire. It must burn. Anyone who touches it, it will burn. Similarly, the nature, when I generate anger, hatred, ill will, animosity, fire, one will see, when one starts observing inside, whenever I generate any negativity, I am the first victim of that. There's a burning sensation throughout the body. Palpitation increases. Tension gets built up. Oh, misery, misery. You make that mistake of touching the fire once, twice, thrice, then you know this burns. You won't touch it. Similarly, you experience not once, 2, or say 100 times by this practice, and you know this kind of reaction harms me. It makes me miserable. It makes me miserable. The habit pattern starts changing. You are coming out of it. Law of nature is such, which is applicable to one and all. Law of nature is that you keep your mind pure. The moment you break this law, the moment you generate any impurity in your mind, you are punished by the law. Then and there. You break the law of a city, of a country, of a state, you are punished. It takes a long time. The case goes from one court to the other court, appeals, etc. Law of nature is such, you break and immediately, instantly you are punished. You break your purity, you generate impurity, you become miserable then and there. And you make your mind pure again, you get reward then and there. There is so much of peace, so much of harmony, which you have never experienced in these sensual pleasures. At the depth, so much of peace, so much of harmony. When people start realizing this law of nature, don't break the law. Keep your mind pure. The old habit pattern changes, the life pattern changes. It is an art of living, how to live peacefully and harmoniously. And it does not affect in any way any tradition. Now, large number of people are coming to courses of Vipassana. There is no religion in the world whose followers are not attending 10-day courses of Vipassana. And not only ordinary householders, their leaders are coming. Till now, more than 2,000 Christian priests and nuns have participated, and they keep on participating. Large number of Hindu sannyasis, Buddha monks, Jain monks, and Muslims coming to the courses. And they find it is also in our religion. It's also in our religion. Every religion, you must understand, every religion as the quintessence has the same teaching. Live a moral life. Is there any religion in the world which says don't live a moral life? Every religion teaches live a moral life. And for that, have a disciplined mind, a pure mind, full of love, compassion, goodwill, tolerance. These are the teachings of every religion, quintessence of every religion. But the difficulty is there is outer shell. This inner essence is the same, uniform everywhere. Outer shell differs. Outer shell, rites, rituals, ceremonies, celebrations, this belief, this dogma, that dogma differs. Let it differ. For us, don't give importance to that. Importance must be given to the quintessence of every religion, the truth, the law of nature. And if that is importance is given, then all other things, let people be happy doing this rite or that ritual or this ceremony or that ceremony, this belief or that belief, this dogma or that dogma, be happy with that. But don't miss this inner essence of the religion. This is spirituality. And if you miss that, then the religion becomes empty shell. The essence is lost. The nectar is gone. Then it becomes a source of misery. Then you start fighting. My religion, you call that outer shell only a religion. My religion is the best religion. Yours is no good. My belief is the real belief. Yours is no good. My right is my real right. Yours no good. And keep on quarreling. Nothing but discord. If you give importance to the inner essence, no discord. How did you fight? Live a moral life. I live a better moral life. All right, I compete with you. I live better moral life than you. What quarrel? My mind is very concentrated. Mine is not concentrated. All right, I'll work to get the mind concentrated. My mind is very pure. All right, I will also try to make it very pure. What quarrel? There's no quarrel. Only concord. All the quarrel comes because of this outer shell and tremendous amount of attachment to this outer shell. This is religion and this is my religion. My religion. This generates all kinds of fundamentalism, all kinds of terrorism. Everybody must be converted into my religion. Otherwise, better kill them. Either they must be in my religion or kill them. Without knowing whom you are killing. You have no enmity with this person. And you blast thousands of people without knowing whom you are killing. Just because they don't belong to my religion. Or they don't belong to my race, they don't belong to my country. Madness, all that madness goes away. So therefore, Vipassana is essential for every human being to learn how to live peacefully and harmoniously within and how to generate nothing but peace and harmony for the atmosphere outside. When I generate negativity, say anger or hatred, I become so miserable. I don't keep this misery limited to myself. The entire atmosphere around me becomes so tense. Anybody who comes in contact with me at that time feels misery. On the other hand, if I keep my mind peaceful, pure, I experience all the peace and harmony within, and the atmosphere around me gets permeated with the vibration of peace and harmony. Anybody who comes in contact with me feels peace and harmony, a way of life, a healthy, harmonious, wholesome way of life. Anybody and everybody has to practice that. It is not limited to any particular community, particular tradition, particular religion. It is universal, non-sectarian. And that is why people from different religions, different countries, different traditions practice it easily and get the same result. But one has to spare 10 days of the life, not just to understand it at the intellectual level, at the experiential level. You already spent about 1 hour. I would like you to spare 10 days of your life. Experience this wonderful truth within yourself for your good, for your benefit, for your liberation from misery, and who knows, through you, for the good and benefit and liberation of so many others. Enjoy real peace, real harmony, real happiness. Good. The question has come. You say Vipassana is so effective. Why don't you teach it to the President of Pakistan and the Prime Minister of India? Then there will be peace. Certainly, both of them are welcome. They must come. Our doors are open. All should come. And the leaders of the country, they need it much more. Everything good or bad percolates from the top and goes to the society. Now people have started from this level also, they have started taking. One minister in the central government of Delhi is a Vipassana meditator. 6 or 7 of them in the state governments are Vipassana meditators. One prime minister of Mongolia is a Vipassana meditator. And he's spreading Vipassana in his whole country because he has himself experienced it is so good. Time will come when all the leaders of every country will practice Vipassana to bring peace. If everything is impermanent, why take the trouble to join a 10-day course? At the intellectual level, you understand everything is impermanent. But what happens at the actual level? When something unpleasant comes, you think, oh, this is eternal. Look, this does not go away. This is eternal. And you aversion towards it. And when you got something pleasant, I got it now. This is eternal. This is eternal. You react to it with craving and you become miserable. To experience this truth of impermanence, pleasant or unpleasant, and to experience how I am reacting to these and making myself miserable so that you can change your habit pattern. For this purpose, you are taking a 10-day course. How could you practice Dhamma when you are still in business? Yes, business people need it. Business people need it much more. You have seen now what is happening in these corporates, big corporates. If they start feeling that I am doing something wrong, some dishonesty, and I am harming others, he will understand I am harming myself also. Out of tremendous greed, I am doing something wrong. And when one starts observing inside, greed arises, and deeper greed arises, one becomes so unhappy, so miserable. So one will do business, one will earn money, but not with the kind of attachment, detached way, so that whatever you earn, for your own livelihood, for the livelihood of those who depend on you, and also for the society, then this craving with attachment and clinging will go away, and one will be a good, better businessman. I know with my experience how miserable I was when I was leading a business firm. And after Vipassana, my business increased, my turnover increased, my industries increased, my profit increased, but the life was so peaceful, so peaceful. Previously, working for about 8 hours, I used to feel so fatigued, so fatigued. But now, after that, I work 10 hours, 12 hours, still so fresh. Capacity to work increases, and that is why large number of business executives in India are coming to courses, and here in the West also, a number of them have started coming to courses. Will your technique help alcoholism? Certainly. This was a wonderful discovery of this enlightened person when he said, you are not reacting to any outside object. This was something new for the whole humanity. There were teachings, you are reacting to outside object. That means you are getting addicted to alcohol, which is an outside object. Buddha says no. When you take alcohol, there is a particular sensation in your body. And deep in your mind, you like that sensation. And you start craving for that sensation. Again, you want that sensation, you take more alcohol. Again, you want sensation, you take more alcohol. By this technique, you start observing the sensation. Look, arising, passing, anicca, anicca, impermanent, impermanent. Your attachment goes away. Attachment to the sensation goes away. Attachment to alcohol goes away. Attachment to drug goes away. Attachment to any intoxicant easily goes away. Just 1 or 2 courses I have seen. Thousands of people who are alcoholics who want to come out of it have easily come out of it. How do you practice this with your wife? Yes, very happily. The unity of Wife and husband become stronger. Both good meditators generate full of love, compassion, goodwill. They live a happy life, harmonious life, good for themselves and good for the children and good for all the relatives. Did you realize nirvana? If yes, what is the state of that of nirvana, of that mind? You practice and experience yourself. Then you know what is nirvana. There is no description. How can there be a description of something which is beyond mind and matter, beyond entire sensorium? When one experiences that stage, which is beyond mind and matter, all sense stop working, and you experience that. Maybe for a few seconds, few minutes, few hours. When you come back in the sensorium, in the world, you are a changed person altogether. But your experience was beyond sensorium. How can you explain? With what words you can explain? And with what words people can understand? So, whenever you experience that, you will become dumb. You can't explain it. Only your behavior will show that you are a changed person. And that can be experienced by everyone. Everyone who comes out of this impurity, comes to a stage where mind has become ultra pure, has to experience something beyond mind and matter, and that is eternal. The entire field of mind and matter is arising, passing, and one keeps oneself free from craving, aversion. One purifies the mind, keeps on purifying the mind, reaches a state that is eternal. Nothing arises, nothing passes away. No explanation, no words can explain it, but it can be experienced by anyone and everyone. Reiki and Vipassana, please explain the compatibility. Nothing wrong in Reiki. Reiki is a technique to help people to come out of various physical ailments. Nothing wrong. I support that. But when you start mixing up Reiki with Vipassana, then trouble starts. Not in all cases, but we have found a number of cases where people have lost their mental arrangement. They became mentally deranged. Why? Because Vipassana wants you to observe the natural sensations. What sensations you feel when you are in anger or in passion or fear, that is what Vipassana teaches you. And here the outside vibration is given the input, and there is a clash. And with that clash, somebody cannot maintain the balance of the mind. So we say, carry on your Reiki. We have got nothing against that. Carry on Reiki. If you like Vipassana, carry on Vipassana, but don't mix the two for your own safety. Is it possible to develop a passion or a craving towards the subtle vibrations? This is what is taught. When people start practicing this, initially they get very unpleasant, gross sensations, and they train their mind, well, they are impermanent, they will pass away, just observe. And suddenly they start feeling a flow, very pleasant sensation, very subtle vibration throughout the body. Then the danger comes. You start craving and clinging for that. And the teacher will say, this is the danger. When you start craving for something pleasant, then you have aversion towards something unpleasant. Understand, this is also impermanent. Many a times we find a student comes, oh, Goenka ji, I reached the final stage. I get such wonderful vibrations throughout the body. This is Anand, Paramananda, etc. I say, no, still you are in the field of mind and matter. By evening, this person comes, I have lost my meditation. It was so good this morning. And now look, with a very long face, sad face, he says, I have lost that. That's why I say, when you experience pleasant sensation, don't take it eternal. It's bound to pass away sooner or later, and then you will become miserable if you have attachment towards it. So the whole technique is to come out of attachment, come out of craving or aversion. Can you please speak on the meaning of Om in relation to the practice of meditation? Om is a wonderful word. The vibration is so wonderful. You keep on repeating, your mind calms down. It becomes pure also to a certain extent, because I have practiced that number of years, so I know what it is. But it does not work with Vipassana. In Vipassana, no verbalization. Every verbalization, everything that you pronounce, mentally even, generates a vibration, and that is a created vibration, not natural vibration. And here the technique wants you to be with the nature, the truth, which whatever happens naturally, when you generate anything in your mind, what sensation you are having. This great discovery again made by this great scientist, nothing can arise in the mind without a sensation on the body. So whatever is arising in the mind and what sensation you have and how you are reacting to this sensation is more important to you than generate an artificial sensation, however good it may be. Keep it aside. You can practice that separately, but not with Vipassana. It will be harmful. During the 10-day course, at times my body would shake involuntarily. No, don't allow that. It shakes sometimes, but whenever that happens, forcefully stop it. This is the path of peace. If anything violent is coming, that means some deep-rooted impurity wants to come out in a violent way. Give it a subtle way. Stop and keep your attention on the extremities. Same impurity will start coming out of the extremities in a very subtle way. This violent, the shaking of the body is not good. It will become your habit. Whenever you sit for meditation of Vipassana, you will start shaking and that will be harmful for you. For students who took a course many years ago but stopped practicing, what would you recommend? Come back, take another 10-day course, start working. There is no magic or miracle. No gurudom. The guru doesn't say, I will liberate you. Come, give me so many dollars, I will liberate you. Not that. You have to work out your own salvation. Somebody can show you the path. That's all. Can you practice Vipassana when taking antidepressant meditation? When you come to a course, discuss with your psychiatrist, discuss with the teacher in what depth depression is gone. But my experience with so many people with deep depression, easily they come out of it. The technique is so simple. As I said, nothing can arise in the mind without a sensation on the body. If depression has arisen in the mind, a good Vipassana meditator just accept the fact, at this moment there is depression in my mind. Depression not related to this or that. Depression as depression. And what sensation I have? Any sensation you have in the body at that time is related to the depression. You start observing the sensation, arising, passing, not eternal. Depression is also related to this, so not eternal. Let me see how long it lasts. It cannot overpower you. It becomes weaker and passes away. Like this, any impurity that has come in the mind, accept that there is an impurity in the mind and what sensation I have. Keep on observing. That is how people come out of their misery of these defilements. What is the end of Vipassana meditation? When you will reach that end, you won't come to ask me questions. As I said, it is beyond mind and matter. The entire field of impermanence arising, passing, you are experiencing that to come out of it. Not that you are just for your intellectual understanding. There is such a big bondage in this field where there is nothing permanent, arising, passing. You have to experience where nothing arises, nothing passes. And when you experience that, no question. All questions are answered. Are there female teachers of Vipassana? Certainly. What difference between male and female? Human being is human being. Human mind is human mind. We have Vipassana female teachers, and I carry one teacher with me. So there is no bar. All students can participate, male or female, and they are teachers, males, females. People from every religion can participate, and they are participating, and they are teachers from every religion. There are Christian priest teachers, nun teachers, there are Muslim teachers, there are Sikh teachers, there are Hindu teachers, there are Buddha. No, makes no difference. Human being is human being. They realize the fact, and they know this is an exercise, mental exercise. As you do asana and pranayam, not necessary to convert yourself to any religion, this is a physical exercise to keep the body healthy. So India found out this wonderful mental exercise which keeps the mind healthy. Anybody can practice and everybody can practice, and they are practicing, and they are teachers from every religion. Why is the Vipassana Foundation building an enormous golden domed meditation hall in Bombay? This does not appear to be with the Vipassana normally humble and modest way. Quite true. We know with our experience, not merely because Buddha said so, samagganang tapo sukho. When you meditate jointly, the peace and harmony that you get, the happiness that you get is enormous when you jointly you meditate. And we find centers where there are large number of people, say in Igatpuri, sometimes 1,000 people are meditating. And such wonderful atmosphere happens because of so many large number of people meditating. The entire atmosphere charged with the purity, love, compassion. Non-meditators come there, and as they enter, they feel so much of peace, so much of harmony. This is the case with every center, but bigger center, more peace, more harmony. And this is being built so that 8 to 10,000 people can sit together. All old meditators, no teaching will be given there. Old meditators sitting together, and we want to examine what happens, what good vibration, and how it helps. And the shape of the pagoda is just to give a feeling of gratitude. When this wonderful technique went out of India to different countries, those countries practiced Vipassana and built pagodas. Just as a memory, a feeling of gratitude, this wonderful technique came from India to have the feeling of gratitude for centuries together. Similarly, now it is coming. India had lost it long ago. It is coming back from Burma, Myanmar. People should remember, for centuries together, it was lost in our country. And look, it has come. Just to generate a feeling of gratitude. That is very important in Dhamma, to have a feeling of gratitude. And that vast hall with 8,000 people sitting together and meditating. And then a gallery where the life of Buddha will be explained in different rooms. During last 1,500 years, I know I came from a very staunch, conservative Sanatani Hindu family. And my mind was so conditioned against Buddhism. This is Buddhism. Oh, this is Buddhism. I should never go to Buddhism. Fortunately, I went for 10-day course, and then I found it is so pure. So all the publicity, wrong publicity done 1,500 years about Buddha and his teaching has to go away for the good of the people, not for establishing a particular sect, for the good of the people. They must understand. They must be grateful to the person, the great scientist of the country, of the mankind, who discovered this wonderful technique, which helped so many people then, is helping so many people now. So in that gallery, the life of Buddha, the teaching of Buddha will be shown so that people understand what it is. So it is for that purpose this pagoda is being built, not for doing any kind of rite or ritual or ceremonies. Just 4? After that I am liberated? Right. Right. May I combine yoga and vipassana. When you say yoga, so far as it is asana and pranayama, it is wonderful. You must combine the two. One is for the health of the body, to make the body healthy, strong. Other is to make the mind healthy and strong. Both should be there. But any meditation part should not be combined. That will create confusion. How old do children have to be to start practicing? Before birth? When the child is in the womb, that is the proper time to give vipassana to the child. Number of pregnant mothers are coming to the courses, and when they meditate this purity, what nutrition they are giving to the child? Purity, love, compassion, goodwill. And the child comes out with this proper feeding and lives a very happy life. Many pregnant mothers come to the course just for this purpose. I want a Dhamma baby, and they get Dhamma baby. So that's the proper time. Is it necessary to have a teacher to deepen the practice? First 10 days, it is very essential because it is actually a deep surgical operation of your mind. All the deep-rooted complexes will start coming up on the surface. And if there is no proper guide, something might go wrong. That is why we insist 10 days in a proper place, under proper guidance. Later on, you are your own master. The whole technique wants you to become your own master. Attahi yattano natho. You are your own master. Attahi yattano gati. You make your own future, good or bad. So be your own master. But where there is any necessity, you can certainly consult your teacher, write him or meet him. You will get proper guidance. How does one keep the mind pure when dealing with a hateful person? Hateful person? That is the problem of that hateful person? Why you take that problem on your head? He is suffering. When he generates hate, he is suffering. So have compassion for this person. Miserable person, what he is doing. But don't allow him to harm you or harm anybody else. Don't do that. Otherwise, it is wrong. The Dhamma does not teach that I am a vegetable vipassana meditator, let anybody come and cut me, I don't care. Oh no. You have to take strong action. First, of course, very politely you explain this person what you are doing. It is wrong, harmful to you, harmful to others. Won't understand. This person does not understand soft language, then use hard language. Use hard action, but again with compassion in your mind, because this person is ignorant person. Have compassion and take hard action. I give sometimes an example, a potter who makes earthen pot. Before putting it in the oven, he makes it strong. So beats it to make strong. Another hand is below that so that it doesn't break. He is beating not to break, but to make. So beat this person not to break, but to make. Let him become a good person. So Vipassana helps you to take proper action with proper situation without harming yourself. When you generate impurity in your mind, you are the first victim of that impurity. You started harming yourself. How can you help others? A lame person cannot help another lame person. A blind person cannot help another blind person. So come out of your impurity, and then you will find every word that you say will be very effective, and you have started helping others. May all of you enjoy real peace with the practice of Vipassana. May all of you be happy, be peaceful, be liberated.